This is my presentation on examining the effect of music on a teenager's attention-keeping capabilities, with a focus on controlling for variability. So, a lot of people like to listen to music while they're working. From common knowledge, we understand intuitively that music can transform most any situation we're into something just that much more exciting, even if it's just playing in the background. On the drive over to school, when we're working out at the gym, or when we're doing homework at our desks, people use this effect of music at pretty much every opportunity to turn monotony into excitement. This effect, coupled with a growing access to music, driven by such advances as more accessible music streaming, makes music one of the most widely accessible mediums, and as such, it's no wonder why science has spent so much attention on making research studies trying to analyze how much or how we can use music in our daily lives. As a student who is always listening to music when I'm studying or doing homework, I especially am interested in figuring out if there's any cognitive benefit to listening to music. More specifically, I wanted to figure out if there was a benefit to listening to music attention-wise. As if I knew this effect of music, if I knew it would help me with studying for homework or studying for a test or something like that, then I could use it to impact my daily life and improve it. This is something that wouldn't apply just to me because, as I said, a lot of people like to listen to music. And if we knew for a fact that there was an intention benefit that came with music, then we would be able to use it as a tool, as it is such an accessible medium. And that's why I created this study, to answer the question, how does music benefit/harm a teenage student's capacity to pay attention? With that out of the way, let's look at the literature surrounding one of cognitive musicology's most prominent hypotheses, which is the Mozart effect. The Mozart effect claims that people tend to perform better at spatial tasks after listening to a piece written by Mozart. And while the media has extensively popularized this theory as purportedly true, scientists have had trouble affirming this hypothesis for years. Some find that the Mozart effect is real and exclusive to music. Some other laboratories find out that the Mozart effect is real, but it's more of an aspect that comes with music overall, and not just from music composed by Mozart. And still, some other studies, even after trying several times, cannot replicate the effects found by the original study. Clearly, there's a replication problem going on here, but it's not as if the whole hypothesis is entirely untrue. If this were the case, I guess publication bias or some other type of data manipulation, there would be no scientists at all, really, who could be able to replicate the study. But we do see some scientists being able to do it. So why is it that some laboratories are able to confirm the hypothesis while others can't? And an even better question, why does this seem to be happening so often with human subjects and not with animals? When Frances H. Rocher, the leading scientist behind the original Mozart effect paper, decided to double down on her study, she made a new one doing exactly the same thing as she did before, but this time on rats. When the results pointed to the presence of the Mozart effect, this time in rats, there was of course some skepticism to be had, and aside from like an 8-year-long, I guess you'd call it a sort of argument between Rocher and Steele, a lot of other laboratories also decided to test this conclusion and see if, like before, it would be mostly inconclusive. That's what they expected anyway, but a weird thing happened. With all the laboratories trying to test this new hypothesis, a lot of them found out that these results were pretty consistently, yes, the Mozart effect does exist in rats. Back in the day when the first rat study came out, there were many laboratories that, as you see there on the middle citations, that tried to do this, and even since then there have been other studies that have revisited it and analyzed it under a new lens and still have found the same thing. So why does the expert consensus for the Mozart effect's existence switch from a hesitant no in humans to yes in rats? This study hypothesizes that is the result of variability. After all, while we look completely different, rats and humans have remarkably similar regions of the brain, and if the consensus around Roger's study is to believe, we also have similar music processing systems too. The only difference then is how much you can control a rat compared to a human. It should go without saying that each human is unique with their own sentiments and views that affects how they perceive and respond to a song. But frankly, there are just simply more variables that require identification when you do a human study compared to when you do a study with rats. This is why even outside of rats, or right outside of even the Mozart effect and rats, hypotheses and cognitive musicology are often more consistent when you're studying on animals instead of humans. With all that in mind, if the study was to attempt to avoid the same air of uncertainty that we find in the human Mozart effect, then it would have to identify and control the variables that made the Mozart effect so inconclusive. and it would have to identify them first, which is right here. After a review of the literature, the following three variables were identified as the most prominent in doing just that. These are mood, familiarity, and arousal. Arousal, defined as an emotional response triggered by music, significantly increases or influences cognition and behavior. As research shows, it greatly intertwines with how we think and act. It has also been shown to be related to music's profound unconscious effects on human behavior, such as altering shopping speeds and consumption habits without our awareness. This connection between music-induced arousal and behavior just goes to show how impactful arousal is to how humans respond to music, and it makes it an important variable to pay attention to for the study. Mood is also one of the variables. It is the emotional effect of a song. It plays a pivotal role in the music-induced arousal process, which, as we just discussed, is a major part of this study. Research by Leitman shows that the mood of a song can bias our perceptions of our surroundings, and a further study on musical mood induction by Etzel revealed that music can invoke a wide range of emotions, from happiness to sadness to even fear. By the way, all these emotions that they inflicted have the appropriate physiological responses that can increase heart rate. Even the European Society for the Cognitive Sciences of Music highlighted the diverse moods that music can induce, emphasizing the importance of controlling mood in the study. Familiarity with a piece of music also plays a crucial role in influencing how we respond to a piece of music. Research by Pieria demonstrated that being familiar with a song significantly influenced one's arousal levels, specifically increased them. This concept is further explained upon in a study by Ganser and Huda, which found that music perceived as annoying but familiar could increase charitable donations more so than a music that was pro-social in lyrics, but that wasn't as familiar to people. These findings, connecting arousal, behavior, and familiarity, all but prove that it's just another important variable that we have to control. At its core, my study's design was very simple. I got a group of 25 students from an all-boys school in Arizona, and I had them complete a couple of tasks commonly used to test attention within the field of cognitive musicology. These are the load-induced blindness task and the task switching task. These tasks would each be completed one at a time in silence and another time with music playing through a pair of headphones. Since the tests were fully digital, all the data was automatically saved to the computers and sent to me via Gmail so I could go and analyze it. The real complexity came from how I was going to attempt to minimize variability. With the three variables we just discussed in mind, my methods were going to have to make sure arousal, mood, and familiarity were present in every single trial, and that's where the idea for an open playlist model stemmed from. Piggybacking off a similar study on how music impacts our ability to drive, this open playlist method was the best way I found to ensure that the three variables identified earlier would be consistently present. And suffice to say, for saving you the whole long explanation, all that the participants had to do to make sure that the three variables would be present within their trial was to listen to my directions that I would send out to them in my recruitment email. Now granted, it isn't unheard of for teenage boys to not follow directions, and so I added a short questionnaire at the end of the experiment, which acted to ensure that these three variables were present even if they didn't actually listen to me. This Google form consisted of the three Likert scale questions you see on the left, and if any response received a score of 2 or less, their data was thrown out completely and I wouldn't use it. There was also another question included in the questionnaire that was there to measure how hard participants thought each task was, but the relevancy of that question is going to pop up later. With that out of the way, let's get to the results. In the end, I ended up getting 25 participants for the study, but as the end of study survey showed, 2 of them did not have the same variables in their study as the other 23 participants, and so their data set was thrown out. Speaking of the end of study survey, participants also indicated that the load blindness task was much more difficult than the task switching task. As for the data I got back from the attention tasks, the table on the screen shows the results from the 2 tests I performed using ART, the first one being task switch, and each variable represents something important about my final results. Starting with task switching, let's examine the t-value, which helps us understand the difference between the data from the trial of music and the data from the trial without it. Interestingly, the t-value was quite small here, hinting at a minimal difference between the trial done with music and the trial done without. For further clarification, I looked at the p-value, which is a key indicator of statistical significance, and it was much higher than the conventional threshold usually assigned to the p-value, which is 0.05. This led me to conclude that the presence of music didn't significantly impact task performance or task switching, which was further supported by the 95% confidence interval, which included 0 within its range, as well as the negative mean difference, which both indicated an insignificant decrease in scores for the task switching test. Contrasting this with the findings from the low blindness component, I found that the results shifted dramatically for the second test. Here, the p-value was significantly larger, indicating a pronounced difference between the music and non-music tasks. This was mirrored also by a substantial drop in the p-value, a 95% confidence interval no longer encompassing 0 within its range, and a mean difference score of negative 11%. With all this data in mind, there's little doubt that a significant negative correlation between music and performance in low blindness tasks was present, unlike with task switching. It should be noted, however, that there was a lot of variability in how each participant performed. This was particularly evident when analyzing the percent improvement scores, which was calculated with the formula you see up there. Well, when this data was visualized on the column chart, the range of responses is immediately apparent. For the low blindness task, responses varied significantly, with one participant improving by as much as 37% and another decreasing by as much as negative 15%. Many participants showed only a slight improvement of less than 15%, and some observed no improvement at all. The same wild ranges also apply to task switching, but they are at a less significant magnitude. Further analysis revealed an interesting pattern between this information too. Participants whose scores decreased in the task switching task often experience a similar decline in the low blindness task with the addition of music. Conversely, those who showed significant improvement in the low blindness task did not necessarily see this improvement carry over to the task switching task. In some instances, their performance remained the same or was even worsened. So what does that all really mean? Talking about implications. This study suggests that the impact of music on attention varies significantly depending on task difficulty. Tasks requiring a minimal amount of concentration, like the task switching task, may not be as greatly affected by music as a harder task, which for this study would be the low blindness task. Interestingly, these hypotheses have been suggested in previous literature, but remain unconnected until now. Additionally, while my study highlights the potential negative effects of music on attention, it's essential to consider the emotional benefits that music can bring about that weren't tested in this quantitative study, such as making the tasks more enjoyable, even if it comes at a detriment to your attention-keeping ability. As for how variability between changes in performance ties into all of this, the variability regarding my data could be explained by the finding that some people's attention spans are simply more susceptible to musical stimuli than others, making them more affected by music when they are trying to focus than another person would be. Moving on to the limitations, it's crucial to acknowledge the constraints that implicated the generalizability of the findings. Firstly, the study's population was small and niche, consisting of only 23 male high school students from a Jesuit private school, making it a very specific demographic. Therefore, my conclusions are not generalizable to the broader demographic. Another significant limitation arose from the methodological oversight, where I didn't regulate if people could have lyrics in their songs. It's a common theme in the literature that lyrics may or may not affect how much we keep our attention when we're using background music, but I didn't specify that, and so a new study would have to either say yes lyrics or no lyrics, and in conclusion, this study can only be applied to songs that have a mix of, or playlists that have a mix of both songs with lyrics and without lyrics. Furthermore, challenges in the data collection, particularly environmental factors such as background noises and distracting ads from music streaming platforms that weren't paid for, pose additional limitations. After all, despite my efforts to minimize external distractions, the testing environment, primarily during lunchtime at school, may have influenced participants' performance. To recap, the main purpose of the study was to investigate the effect of background music on the teenage attention span, with an emphasis on minimizing human variability. Through the usage of an open playlist method and an open source cognitive battery and an end-of-study survey, this study on attention was successfully carried out with minimal variability. After careful analysis, the study identified that music does not significantly impact attention in tasks that demand minimal focus, such as the task switching task, but music does have a detrimental impact on attention for tasks that demand much more focus, like the low blindness task. The resistance people have to this detrimental effect of music varies from participant to participant and should be the subject of future research. But for right now, people should just keep listening to music if it doesn't feel too distracting, and stop listening if it does impede their attention ability. With all that said, thank you for your attention and have a great day.